Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you, listeners, again for joining us, and thank you, Mufti, for joining us again in this episode.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the wonderful tea. I'm very happy to be part of this conversation this morning.
Inshallah. As a start, we'll be talking about some of the challenges that all of us are facing. As early this year or late last year, we're facing a new form of virus that is unprecedented. Being a Mufti, you had to overlook all these challenges. And what were your first reactions when you first heard about this virus?
Yeah, well, I think we did hear about this virus and the infections taking place at such a rapid pace and speed in China. I think late last year and in early January, and I think there were already concerns around the world. Some took it a lot more seriously than others, but I think people were beginning to get really concerned. And obviously we did too in Singapore, and of course, you fast forward a couple of weeks in February, early March, things became a lot worse.
Yeah.
I think for our community, if I can recall correctly now, we had an incident where some of the members of our community went to a religious gathering in Malaysia, in Selangor. And they were infected. They got infected in Selangor, and that was the first turning point for us, where we quickly had to make a decision in order to protect the rest of the community and society from getting infected, that we had to close the mosque for cleaning, and also to because the individuals who came back had already gone to various other mosques as well. So that led to the first decision, which, as we all know, is an unprecedented one, that we have had to close all our mosques in Singapore. It was a very difficult moment. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was my second or third week as a Mufti.
Yeah, I recall that being your first few weeks as a Mufti. What was your thought back then?
I mean, even before that, before thinking about myself as a Mufti, I'm also a human being. I'm also a family member, with family and with my wife and my son and my parents who stay with me. So obviously the issue really then was about public health safety. It's about keeping everybody safe. So we were concerned. No one is immune, right? I think this has been repeated many times. The virus or viruses in general do not discriminate whether you're of a particular race or a particular religion or a particular even socioeconomic status. You're affluent or you're not. Nobody is, unless you're vaccinated, and of course there's no vaccine for this yet. So we were concerned about our own health, about keeping our elderly safe, and then it came to quite a serious situation where we have to protect public, and especially in large gatherings like in our mosque. So those were the moments where we had to really think very carefully, but think on our feet. You can't wait. The interesting thing, Ustaz Mateen, is that in many of our decisions before COVID-19, we often try to make reference to other views from other scholars in other countries, look at their experiences. And we rarely, unless absolutely necessary, we rarely come out with the so-called the first to move, the religious thinking, for example. And we make reference to other views which have existed
in other places.
In other places, by other scholars, for example. So that's often the practice. But back in March, we had no reference point. I think at that point, there might have been at most only one country which may have closed some mosque. I think Iran was hit earlier than us. So Iran did suspend some congregations and so on, but it wasn't very clear at that point whether they have closed all their mosques. So we were quite on our own.
Yeah, and the clock is ticking.
Exactly, and we had to make important decision. So obviously, if you imagine yourself in my shoes as as the Mufti, I'm not alone in doing this job. I'm well supported by Office of the Mufti and the Fatwa Committee and many senior asatiza. But I think we had to carry out that important
Decision.
conversation, discussion, and come to a very important decision, which we did. So of course, you mix, all the emotions of anxiety, worry, fear. But I think what really encouraged me was the response. I think a lot of people could see the although
reason, the rationale behind.
That's right. They saw the importance of the decision,
yeah.
but they also, struggled with the fact that this has never been done before. And I think, as leaders, we also do not, ignore the fact that people find it difficult to adjust. In fact, until today.
It's a legitimate concern.
Exactly. And we need to empathize with the community, with society, because I always feel that, people are resilient in the sense that they can make adjustments. In fact, we have always adjusted ourselves. We have always, we don't compromise on the principles, but we do make some refinements. If you look at our practices over the decades, we have moved gradually. But the key word here is gradual. It takes time for habits to change, for culture to change. But this time, we don't have time on our side.
To implement the gradual process.
Exactly. So everything had to take place very quickly. And a lot of adjustments. So I can fully understand, I can fully empathize with everyone, including myself, struggling to sort of make those adjustments. But what I think is wonderful in the process, at least to me, is that you can, the fact that you make a lot of adjustments within a short period of time, you can fast track your growth and development. And become a lot more mature, a lot more developed, because you have taken on so many challenges at one go.
And we're not too confined in a very strict routine that we have been used to.
Exactly. So you're forced to change, but you're forced to change within a short period of time and change a lot of things. I think there are many people who have said that, before COVID, everybody wanted to do this digital learning, learning online, but they drag their feet, well, this is a 3-year plan, this is a 5-year plan. Now, 2 months, 3 months, you just have to pick up the skills, you have to go online. So that happened. And what that does is, you because of a necessity, they say necessity is the father of all invention. So because of necessity, we have reinvented ourselves in the way we do things. And I think more beautifully is we find new ways of expressing our spirituality. And I think that it's a very positive, powerful thing, and finding ways to connect with community and people.
Despite all these positive notes, there are some challenges as well. Some of us, there were some articles I saw, they noted down some of the employment rates, which I think it went down quite sharp. And the last was during SARS in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. But despite that, there were some other challenges as well, spiritual challenges. We had to try to make sense of whatever is happening. As an individual Mufti, how can I try to make sense amidst all these challenges?
Yeah, the COVID-19, certainly I think the impact is wide and deep. It's very deep, it's very wide. And I think what makes it more difficult is that we don't know yet. We don't know yet, and it's always very difficult to have so many things which are quite uncertain. It's difficult to plan. So we don't know how long, for example, it will drag on. People talk about finding a vaccine. There are a lot of clinical trials, but history shows that vaccines do not emerge overnight. It takes a long time to create one. And in the meantime, then businesses will be affected, the economy will be affected. So I think the consequences are very serious. It's not just on the religious life, social religious life. It's on people's livelihood.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think for the short term, certainly we need help. And I think we are grateful that in Singapore there are various forms of help, either by the government itself or by other groups. For us in MUIS, for example, I think we are ready to offer even more help to those families who are affected. Already there are families who are receiving the monthly assistance. There may be more families needing such assistance. So we must be ready to help. But our resources are also not infinite, right?
It's limited.
Yeah, and also we rely on the community support. So if they are affected, we will also then be affected. So it's a very serious situation. I think what we may need to do, and this goes back to, if I may, just to touch on, goes back to some of the, for as Muslims, we always try to find the hikmah, the wisdom,
Yes.
right? Because we believe that nothing happens without a bigger purpose. Everything in life, whether it happens to us individually or it happens to the entire society or the world, there must be something behind it. And I think some people have used this term, which I think is a very good term. It's an opportunity for us to reset. Reset, like how we reset our phones and how we reboot our computer. Sometimes nowadays, I recall that my wife's phone, this was the older phone, it didn't work well, right? It didn't work well, and so we went to a shop and we asked the guys, can you please help us with this phone, because we don't know why it's wrong, why it's not working well. And he had a look and he said, let me try one thing. And you know what he did?
He just reset.
Switched off and switched it on, switched it back on, and he said, and it worked. And basically he said, a lot of people come with their phone problems because they have never switched off their phone for so long. Because now we keep our phones on, right?
Yeah.
Even when we sleep. We can't basically cut off from social media, from communication. So what this is telling us, and especially the lockdowns, if you remember the images, maybe you want to share with our listeners some of the very haunting images where cities and roads, which are always very, very crowded,
very
congested,
lively,
it's empty, like it's a ghost town. People say it's a ghost town or apocalyptic. So everything is being reset, right? And I think the resetting is important. The other thing about resetting is also the lesson or hikmah of COVID, to me personally, is it tells us that the importance of slowing down. Slowing down. This thing about our 21st century lifestyle, it's a breakneck speed. We do things so fast. We need to churn results.
And it's really hard to make sense of all this fast-paced life.
Exactly, and so therefore you don't really have much time to think about what to me are more important things in terms of the grand sort of
purpose in life,
purposes, your objectives, what you can do, and so on. So this is a real opportunity for us to slow down, and for the whole world to slow down as well. So I think in this moment, when you talk about the challenges, the economic challenges, I think we can also think about, this is a very powerful lesson of, the need for us to save up, the need for us to manage our finances very carefully, the need for us to not spend beyond our means. So for example, if we, even in good times, right, we have a certain amount of income, it doesn't mean because it's a good time we just spend all of it. We must, they say, prepare for the rainy days. This is not a rainy day. This is hailstorm, thunderstorm, cyclone, hurricane, call it whatever you like. Because if you're out of job, you are out of job. And also, I just read this morning on the way here that Qantas is cutting 6,000 jobs. So if you're in the Qantas, the airline, so and grounding 100 flights. So if you're a captain of if you fly the aircraft, that's a very senior position. But if you can't fly the aircraft is grounded, you have lost your income possibly. So those are the difficult days that we have to go through. But I think this is the hikmah is the opportunities for us to plan
reflect better.
Yes, plan well, And the other part of planning, and I think this is an investment that will always be profitable. Okay, investments, if anybody tells you investment is 100% guaranteed profitable, then you know that they are basically fake, or what do you call it? Scam, right? There's no such thing as businesses which are 100%, investments which are 100% profitable. You can't guarantee profit. But there is an investment that is 100% profitable, and that is learning.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, learning. If I may just to share with you my personal sort of decision making, I remember that after my masters, I had a good 5 years after my masters working at MUIS, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a PhD, right? So I had a long discussion with my wife because my son was growing up. He was about 3 years old. So we had a discussion, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do a PhD, whether that was, being academically trained is something I wanted. So I was at a crossroads in terms of making a decision. But in one of our discussions, then I said this, and I said, what happens if we leave and I do a PhD, 4 years plus, it would be done, right? So let's say 5 years. Let's look 5 years ahead. 5 years ahead. Imagine ourselves, back then was 2009, 2010. So I said, imagine in 2015, if we had made the decision to leave Singapore and for the university and do a PhD, 2015 I come back, say I now have a PhD in my hand, right? If we had not made that decision and we had stayed in Singapore and just basically work, in 2015 I may have looked back and said, I missed that opportunity. If I had gone, I would have gotten that PhD now. Well, I could have gotten other things in the 5 years, right? But if learning was important to me, then that would have been a big loss. And you never know what will happen in 2015.
Yeah, you might not even see that opportunity again.
Exactly. And your circumstances may change. You want to really go, but you can't, right? Something happens. So I think learning is important. And I think now, yes, we have a lot of challenges and limitations. But if there is one thing you could do to learn to pick up a new skill, then you do it, because it will be profitable. It may not necessarily translate into like a very, a full-time job or a specific job. It may not happen that way, but that skill will help you somehow, because knowledge is always very powerful. It will find its way and help you, if not, getting a particular employment, but in impressing, certain sort of employers, or helping boost your your credentials and your CV. So that is something that we should do. And I think this downtime for us is don't waste it. And we are in the best state in terms of so many free courses out there online.
Yeah, a lot of things are brought online.
Yes.
In fact, I think I saw some universities, they uploaded their classes.
In fact, not just the lectures, but also the whole course, the readings and so on. So I think there's so many opportunities that we can use and take. And I totally understand that if you don't have a job now, or your job has been reduced, that would be your main concern, right? Because you want to find. But as you work on that, as you find opportunities, don't let that time that you have, waste away. Go and learn something new. And I'm very, very sure and confident that whatever new thing that you learn will help you at some point later on in life.
MashaAllah. So we don't just try to take these circumstances or the challenge that we have as the end goal, but we try to look further and then try to develop more as well.
When you said that, I'm reminded the hadith, the Prophet said about, Sallallahu said, if the day of judgment comes, right? إِذَا قَامَتِ السَّاعَةُ وَفِي يَدِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَصِيلَةٌ فَلْيَزْرَعْهَا, right? So if the day of judgment comes, means the world is ending.
Even we are actually facing
at the time of death, or judgment.
End,
and you have a sapling or a seed in your hand, plant it. So people have questioned this: if it's ending, why you plant? What do you get, right? But it means two things. One is, A, you still have an opportunity to do good, so you do good regardless of time, right? As long as you can do it. So you don't look at when, as long as you can do that good thing, just do. And the other thing is, think ahead. Think ahead. So a seed or a sapling is a metaphor for growth and prosperity and development, right? So you think about that and you just plant it. So allow it to grow, allow it to develop. So let's think of ourselves now as carrying, every one of us carrying a seed, right? We won't see the results yet because we are going through a challenge or a crisis, but plant it now. At some point, it will grow into something big, and then we will benefit.
Okay, so there are some key takeaways that I can try to summarize, Mufti, from your discussion. It is to firstly and foremost to have a very good and strong sense of hopeful in a hopeful sense in mind lah, to see that even despite all these challenges, there is always an opportunity for us to develop ourselves, and that we will try to develop better. And what more better way to develop ourselves than to learn, to seek knowledge, either being a religious or non-religious knowledge. It's important for us to develop ourselves as a better individual in life. And so thank you so much again, Mufti, for sharing with us all those important points for us to reflect on. Maybe you can share with us or with the listeners, what are some of the key to it, or the main points that you would like to highlight for us?
Well, I think you've said it very well, Ustaz Mateen. What comes to my mind just as a closure is something I remember from, what some say the scholars have said, and some attribute it to Imam Shafi'i. Al-abdu bayna al-khawfi wa raja. Right? The servant, we as humans are always between two states of fear, anxiety, and hope. Right? So I think this describes our situation perfectly. That we must continue to remain careful and vigilant. We cannot be overconfident, even as we find ourselves in a slightly better position. And we also fear that God is not pleased with us, even as we try our best. So we constantly ask for His acceptance and forgiveness. But we are also hopeful. We are also hopeful that there is a hikmah, a powerful wisdom behind what we go through, and we can emerge better, we can emerge stronger, provided we do the right things. We continue to learn, we continue to help one another, we look out for each other. So I think between those two states, we find ourselves, if we focus on the right things to do, inshallah, we will always come out better at the end.
Mashallah, that's a very important note for us to benefit from. Thank you again, Mufti, for sharing all those important notes and reflections for us to ponder upon. Now, if you like all the discussions and reflections in this episode, do look forward for more in our next episode. And inshallah, we will have more important discussions as well. And with that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.